because we certainly would not like to compromise that. Sekonat, I think you can deal with the system outlook briefing. Thanks.
Thank you, Philip. Terence and colleagues, the System Outlook media briefing will be held on the 11th of May, 2022. We are very much in preparation for that, and you will in due course receive your invitations. We will indeed present an exhaustive plan. Henley Stedler is asking you, Philip, can you tell us if leave for Eskom maintenance staff and management for the Easter weekend has been cancelled?
So how we deal with this, we know exactly what work needs to be done for each power station during this period. So for those areas, it will not be a blanket approach that says you must cancel all maintenance, because we know this creates a problem, because you back up on maintenance and then people go on forced leave as a result. So for those areas, for those units where work will be taking place, yes, people will be around. We're making plans, in fact, as we speak, to make sure that even contractors that are needed will be available. So no, it will not be a blanket approach, but we will certainly ensure that the resources that are needed for the maintenance that needs to be done in these units, those resources are available.
Thank you, Philip. The next question comes from Anton Mayer of Pretoria FM. This is for Sekhumutso Skiepas. Can you provide us with the average amount of electricity that eThekwini uses? Sekhumutso, are you with us?
Thank you, Sikonati. Good morning. Yes, thank you very much for that.
Sekhumutso, please switch on your camera.
Sikonati, can you see me now?
Indeed, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sikonati. I do not have the precise figure. I think my colleague, Mr. Bala, may be better positioned to answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Sekhumutso. Sekhumutso is the head of transmission. Anton, I can tell you that eThekwini is the biggest region in KwaZulu-Natal, which is the second largest province in terms of demand on the Eskom system after Gauteng. KwaZulu-Natal consumes about 7,000 megawatts of capacity. Mondebala is not with us on the line. That's why I am answering that question. But I can source the latest figures and make sure you receive that. Thank you very much. The next question comes from Clyde Merenson. How does the current demand for this time of year compare to pre-COVID levels? What is the expected winter peak demand? Sekhumutso, you will answer this one, please, sir.
Yeah, Sikonati, once more, thank you very much. The figures we had for the last winter was around 35,000 megawatts, taking into account the self-dispatch of the renewables. We've had a greater recovery in terms of system demand compared to the previous year. And for the coming winter, I think we are more or less stable. I don't think we're expecting significant growth. When we do provide the system update early May, we'll be able to also articulate this with more precision. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sekhumutso. André de Ruyter, this question is for you from Chris Yeland. Can you advise on the apparent contradiction? DMRE says Cap Powership RMIPPP projects will be finalized end April 2022. Eskom says power purchase agreements, it is not ready for signing PPAs for 6 weeks. Environmental and ports authorization not in place, etc. What is the current state of affairs with that contract and all the IPPs, André?
Thank you, Chris. So discussions, as I said, are continuing between the various parties who are involved, DMRE, the IPP office and Eskom. We want to be as collaborative and as cooperative as possible within the confines of trying to look after the best interests of Eskom as an entity. And it remains to be seen whether all of these issues will be resolved in time for the end of April. Again, with regard to questions, as I said yesterday in response to questions from Terence, that we should please direct these questions on other conditions precedent that are really not within the control of Eskom, environmental authorizations, port authorizations, and so forth. Please direct those to the IPP office and to the DMRE. They are best placed to advise on progress made by the various bidders on the RMIPPP program to address the outstanding approvals that they still require to proceed with their projects.
Thank you, André. The last set of questions that I do have is Paige Muller from Times Live. Paige, these questions have already been answered this morning, but I will just read them out for you and summarize the answer. Yesterday, you mentioned some substations had flooded. In light of the DA and the EFF's demand that load shedding be ended in KZN, do you have comment? Is it load shedding or flooding in the area? In his opening remarks, André said just now that with the eThekwini municipality, Eskom has reached agreement that there will be no load shedding there, and Eskom is indeed working with the disaster management services and the authorities in KwaZulu-Natal, and we are providing all assistance that can be provided to the province. There certainly is no load shedding taking place within the eThekwini municipality boundaries. Thank you so much. The next set of questions comes from Kabi. I do not have your, there you go, Nyokabi Rodriguez from Bulletin. With the current situation with supply capacity, unit breakdowns and the rainy situation, can South Africans expect longer load shedding hours? What is the strategic plan of solving the constant breakdown of power supply units? Are you going to take that, Philip, please? Oh, André?
Now, I want to give a bit of context there because I think it's important, again, not to delve back into ancient history, but bear in mind that in 1998, an electricity white paper was published that pointed out that there was a dire and urgent need for new generation capacity to be added to the grid. In 2004, Professor Anton Eberhard wrote a very prescient article in which he said that even though there was no load shedding at the time, based on the pattern in which Eskom was running its power stations in order to meet demand, and based on the amount of maintenance that was being carried out, that there was a very real risk of load shedding in future. And it was actually quite prophetic. If one reads that article today, it's actually quite remarkable how he forecast exactly what then happened. Now, as you know, the decision to proceed with the construction of Medupi and Kusile was only taken in 2007, which is 9 years later than when it should have been. And due to the fact that these power stations were built under an enormous amount of pressure, we were designing the power stations as we were building them. And it's not surprising, therefore, that there were design defects that crept into these projects. And we have therefore had the situation where we have struggled with design defects. These have now by and large been addressed at Medupi. We're in the process of addressing these at Kusile, but to acknowledge that both projects are overspent, late, and did not perform, initially at least, to the required specification. We have also repeatedly stated that we need about 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts of new generation capacity to be added to the grid as soon as possible. And we're therefore very pleased to see that the DMRE and the IPP office have proceeded with bid window 5 as well as with bid window 6. We also announced yesterday that we are doing everything from our perspective by making available land in Mpumalanga that Eskom owns for renewable energy projects to be connected to the grid as soon as possible. Now, these are all steps that arguably should have been taken 10 to 15 years ago in order to provide Eskom with the headroom to carry out the required maintenance. The fact that that headroom was not available meant that we were running our units with a ref counter in the red, and we did not do as much of the required maintenance as we were supposed to. And that is why the percentage of planned maintenance that we carried out, that is why I made specific reference to that in my introductory remarks, that we have only seen over the past 20 years, 3 years in which we were able to breach the 10% limit on planned maintenance. If you look at the minimum requirement for maintenance that should have been done on an annual basis, it's closer to 13%. And to be safe, according to global benchmarks, we should actually have taken out 18% on planned maintenance. So the backlog in maintenance has really been a long time coming. And like with any piece of sophisticated mechanical equipment where you do not carry out preventative maintenance, the loans that we took from the future by deferring maintenance and not doing maintenance as we should have, those loans are now falling due, and they are proving very expensive for us to address. The ultimate answer is new capacity additions as soon as possible in order to allow us more headroom to carry out and catch up with the maintenance backlog. Can you please, Philip, add anything to that? If you wish, I just wanted to give that historical context.
Thanks, André. I think that covers quite a lot. But I just want to add that on our side, obviously, we are not giving up. There is still a lot of maintenance that we are doing to try to, given the history, given the issues that we are facing, but to try to have as much of our units available as possible. This is obviously not easy, taking into consideration the lack of maintenance and also the age of our units. But we are doing the best that we can to try and make sure that our units can produce as much as possible with all those constraints that you've already mentioned. Thanks.
Thank you, colleagues. We have Clyde Melanson again. In discussions on the gas-dominated projects in the risk mitigation program, is there a current estimate of the equivalent cost per kilowatt hour given the steep increases in gas prices? Do you have that information, André, please?
I think, Sigunati, we should schedule a separate media briefing on the RMIPPP. It seems there's a significant amount of interest in this. I don't have this number at hand. This is a media conference dealing with load shedding, not with the RMIPPP.
Thank you. If you send us an email, Clyde, with all your questions on this matter, we will find the correct team to respond to those as soon as we possibly can. Craig Mockel has this to say. Given the diesel supply constraints to the OCGT fleet, what is the status of their conversion to also use gas? Assuming that gas would be cheaper and cleaner than diesel, what constraints is Eskom facing to procure gas, noting that small to mid-scale volumes can be delivered as containerized LNG well before an FSRU plus pipeline can be deployed from the nearest port? I hope I read that well. Again, that's another gas question that I assume you don't have, André?
I can respond to that one, Sikonati. We are intending to approach the market with a request for proposals on the supply of gas to both Ankerlig as well as Ruyter. We have had the procurement process initiated, and we are in the final throes of being able to prepare that submission to the market, and that should reach the market imminently. We take note of your proposal on containerized LNG. If and when we approach the market, we would encourage bidders to certainly make those offers available to us, particularly having regard to the low load factor that is associated with those OCGTs. It is really quite a challenge to justify expenditure in permanently installed FSRU and pipeline infrastructure based on the average load factor that we see for our OCGTs, which makes the situation rather more complicated. Thanks, Craig. Please keep an eye out on our tender portal where you can access this request.
Thank you, André. Peter Atat Montalto of...
And we're coming out of that Eskom briefing, as you heard there from Skonati Manjanja, that the next one will be on the 11th of May. Let's take you to this now.